Hello.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, we're just gonna let everyone get settled for a second, then get started. Okay. Looks like everybody's kind of getting settled, so I think we'll get started. My name is Ross Yelsey. I'm an assistant director of admission and marketing at Columbia Journalism School. I'd like to welcome you to this information session, which is going to go over some of the essential things you want to know when you're applying to the journalism school about our programs, our admissions procedures, the application requirements, and the financial aid opportunities, and kind of the costs that go into doing an education at Columbia. Before we get started, I thought I'd have my colleagues introduce themselves, and maybe John, if you want to start, we'll move on from you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My name is John Graham. I'm also an assistant director of admissions here at Columbia Journalism School. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm really excited.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Hooker. I'm a coordinator in the office. Very glad that everyone decided to join us today. We're very excited to talk to you.
Hello, I'm Edwin Isaac. I'm the associate director of financial aid and admission. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Tara Nelmenstar. I'm the Assistant Dean for Financial Aid and Admissions. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christine Souders. I'm the Associate Dean for Admission and Financial Aid, and it's great to see you all today.
Great, thanks, Christine. So I think what we'll do first is do a brief overview of our academic program so you get a sense of the different things we have to offer for people who want to study journalism at the higher level, at the graduate level. And I will start off asking John here to tell us a bit about our Master of Science program, which is our largest program at the school.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Ross. So again, this is going to be like a brief overview of our programs. We'll be hosting events throughout, the fall semester where we're really going to go in depth with each program. But essentially, we have what is known as our Master of Science program, which is designed for the individual who may or may not have a lot of experience in journalism. Some of our applicants may come from, an undergraduate background in journalism, have worked for the school newspaper. Others may be totally new to it and are really just passionate about journalism and want to learn more. So we have a few different areas within this Master of Science program. We have our comprehensive program, which really is a very broad overview of journalism that really gives you the fundamentals and what we feel is essential in this business. Reporting reps, going out there and doing the kind of shoe leather reporting that we feel like is very important, learning how to speak to sources, learning how to pitch stories, enhancing your writing skills, having a variety of different multimedia classes to choose from, and also some long form reporting courses in some sort of beat related areas such as arts and culture or international reporting or covering religion, just to name a few. Within the Master of Science, we also have two specialized concentrations. We have a Stabile investigative specialization and a documentary specialization. The Stabile investigative specialization is essentially designed for the reporter who wants to do accountability reporting, who wants to speak truth to power, who wants to hold institutions accountable for the way they conduct themselves and how they, serve the people who they are designed to serve, or to, hold entities accountable. A primary example of a giant investigative piece is the Harvey Weinstein case, where so many women across different spans of their, Harvey Weinstein's career were able to speak about their interactions with him, and there were consistent patterns across these interviews. So that's a prime example. The documentary specialization is really designed for somebody who wants to tell stories through documentary film, who wants to find characters to really focus on and tell other people's stories, really illuminate the stories of others through documentary filmmaking. You'll learn really the essentials of working with the camera, editing a film, and then ultimately unveiling a short 30-minute documentary film. We also have what's known as the data journalism program, which is designed for the journalist who wants to tell stories by way of data, learning how to utilize data, learning how to analyze it via Python, learning how to do visualization, learning how to basically find patterns within large, massive data sets and speak to broader systemic issues within that data set in a way that's intelligible for the masses. And then we have a dual degree program with the engineering school. And so it's a dual degree in journalism and computer science. And essentially that is designed for somebody who has a background in computer science or engineering and who wants to basically build platforms for journalism, who wants to make journalism more accessible and in a way that is, tangible and that is, interactive in a much more complex visualization kind of format. People who are doing really great work in computer science journalism are utilizing artificial intelligence, the kind of things where you can, simulate, pollution in different areas of the world. So, it's very complex and it really helps to engage the reader or the person who is looking at this journalistic piece in a way that's far more than just words. It's also very visual as well. We also have a part-time program. And so you can do the comprehensive Master of Science program part-time, or you can do the Stabile concentration part-time. Most of our programs are 9.5 months. The documentary and the data degree program are 12 months. They go for an additional semester because data, you're learning really complex systems and learning how to analyze data sets. Documentary, you're going to be making a film for that third semester. The dual degree with journalism and computer science is 2 years. You'll get 2 masters, one from the journalism school, one from the engineering school. And then the part-time program is 2 years. So you basically take the same requirements as the comprehensive Master of Science student or the student who is in the Stabile concentration, but you just span it over 2 years rather than 9.5 months. So that is, in a nutshell, kind of like a quick rundown of the Master of Science programs. And like I said, we'll be talking more about those throughout the fall. So if you have any questions about those, sign up for our events or reach out to us and we can talk more about that.
Great, thanks, John. And I'll talk about the Master of Arts program. I know that sometimes different schools have different types of graduate programs. Some are called Master of Science, some are called Master of Arts. Sometimes they feel kind of interchangeable. And so at Columbia Journalism School, we have 2 different programs, Master of Science, which John just described, and Master of Arts. And though they're both master's degree, they are different in terms of what they offer. And the Master of Arts differs in the sense that it is really intended for journalists who already have experience in the field. So it's for people who don't need to necessarily learn all the skills a journalist should need to know. The MS program does an amazing job of teaching all of that. The MA presumes that you already have reporting skills. You know how to do a multi-source, kind of ambitiously done kind of story already and have done that several times. So you don't feel like you need to learn the ins and outs of reporting when you come into the school. It kind of starts, hit the ground running with the MA program. And the MA also differs in the way that it's kind of designed. It's more about going in depth in a certain area. So there's 4 concentrations in the MA program: arts and culture, business and economics, politics, and science. And so you choose one of those 4 concentrations and you really learn from top journalists in the field about how to write and report more deeply in that area. And you also get to take 3 outside courses outside of the journalism school in fields related to one of those concentrations. So for instance, if you're in the science concentration, you could take a class in climate policy, you could take a class in anthropology, in the history of science, in science of global warming, astrophysics, whatever it is that helps you kind of learn more about certain things you want to report more deeply about. So it's for people who want to go deep into one kind of area of journalism as opposed to learning a really robust kind of wide skill set, which the MS is all about. And it's a really great opportunity to really deepen your knowledge in a base and really push yourself as a journalist if you've been working in the field already and want to go further in the profession. So that's the MA. And I think, Christine, you'll talk a little bit about our PhD program in communications.
Exactly. Yes, we offer a PhD program in communications. It's a multidisciplinary program. Students take courses here at the journalism school, but they also are able to make use of the other resources at Columbia, and depending on what their particular interests are, their research interests, what their dissertation interests might be, they can take courses across the university. So at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the Business School, the Law School, Teachers College, the School of International and Public Affairs, the Medical School, They can also take courses at other universities here in New York City as a part of an inter-school doctoral consortium that we have with the universities located here in New York City. So there are lots of opportunities to explore really very broad aspects of communications. The program is designed for people who want to become academics. So people who want to teach at the university level and people who want to do research. I would say that it is not appropriate for people who want to be journalists and to improve their writing skills. For that, you want to look at one of our master's level programs. But for people who have already determined that they want an academic career, the program in the PhD program in communications is definitely an option. Take a look on the website. There's lots of information there about the program, the faculty, the current students. There are bios of our current students so that you can get an idea of what the faculty are looking for. And you are also welcome to email me if you have further questions about the PhD program. You can reach me at cs2534@columbia.edu. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And I should mention too, I've seen we already have some questions in the chat here, which is great. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the rest of our presentation about the admissions procedures and the financial aid, and then we'll open it up to answer a lot of the questions you are posing there. I would say we'll try to answer as many as we can. We know that some of them will be for more of a general audience that can apply to a lot of people, so we'll try to talk about those. If you have a very specific question about your own situation or background, you can write to apply.journalism@columbia.edu if you want to speak more specifically about your own situation, because we won't be able to address everyone's specific case in this kind of forum. And so I think we'll move on to talk more about applying for these different programs we just covered. And David, if you want to start off, we could talk about applying to the MS first and what goes into that and what the deadlines are for applying this particular season.
Sure. Thanks, Ross. So essentially, the application process is pretty straightforward, and that's across all the master degree programs. So what you're going to do is you're going to submit a resume. You're going to also want to submit transcripts. And we do require to have transcripts from each and every university that you have attended. If you did a study abroad program, or if you transferred from another university, we would like to see the transcripts from each and every university that you have attended. You can actually just upload it directly to the application portal. Once you decide to enroll in the summer, that's when we'll actually have to have the transcript submitted directly from the university. But just for this initial phase, just uploading it to the application is perfectly fine. If you are an international student and you attended a university where the transcripts were not in English, what we would need is to have the original document or original transcript uploaded along with the translation. And we would really prefer if it's a certified translation, okay? I think that's transcripts. And then as far as recommendation letters, we do require to have 3 reference letters. You should think about asking, for example, supervisors or academic professors. You can also reach out to editors, whether it's professional or if you work for your student newspaper. So essentially, it's going to be someone that you directly reported to, whether it's in the role as your direct supervisor, or if you were a student, it could be your academic professor. There's really no sort of difference between which one. One isn't preferred over the other. That's totally up to your discretion. But those are the types of people that you should think about asking. You want to generally stay away from asking family members, relatives, friends, colleagues, family friends. Again, you really want to ask someone who has either supervised your work or did your evaluation. That's the type of people that we want to hear from, because we want to know from those recommenders, being able to give us insight about your potential as a journalist or as a graduate student. And on that note, if you haven't maybe spoken with that person, maybe you graduated, 3 or 4 years prior, you should get in touch with that person first, so that tell them, what you're applying for. You should send them your updated resume. And if you also already worked on the essays, you should also send that, just so they have some context, so they can sort of be aware of what you're doing and why you're applying to Columbia and why you want to be a journalist. So that's the recommendation letters. Each application is required 2 essays, and that's across the board for the MS program, the MA, and for the PhD. Those are personal essays and a professional essay. This is the opportunity where you get to tell us your story. You get to use your voice. So you think of this as an interview. You want to basically tell us in these 2 essays what your personal experiences are, what sort of events in your life has happened that have helped shape you to want to become a journalist, what experience you have in journalism already. If you don't have any experience in journalism, why are you applying to journalism school? Maybe you're a career changer and you don't have journalism experience. So if we look at your resume, we wouldn't specifically know why you're applying to journalism school. So this is your opportunity to tell us the reasons why, and why you want to come to Columbia. You also talk about, what types of things that you want to do while you're at Columbia, what you want to do as a graduate, what you're interested in doing in the field of journalism. I think the only sort of requirement for the essays is that we want them to be informative. We want them to be well written. And obviously we want them to be a reflection of your own voice. So those are the 2 that are required. And then John was mentioning earlier that there are specializations within the MS program. And then Ross also mentioned the MA, 4 different concentrations. So if you're interested in applying to either of those programs, there's a 3rd essay that you have to complete. And in that essay, you're just sort of reiterating why you're applying for that specific program, whether it's investigative, whether it's documentary, or if it's any of the 4 concentrations within the MA program. So those are the essays, the 2 essays. Remember, the 3rd one is optional, only if you're applying for any of the specializations or concentrations. Then we have written samples. They can be published. They also don't have to be published. If you're applying for the MA program, we would expect you to have journalistic writing. So in that area, you sort of do think that you should have some sort of published work. Some examples for students who might not have journalism experience. If you've worked for your student newspaper in college, you can submit an article that you wrote for that. If you're doing your own blog, you can submit some stories from there. It can be a research paper, it can be an academic paper. But just sort of keep in mind that you want it to be something that you feel represents you and your best work, and it displays your writing. It has to be your sole work. It cannot be something that you've co-written with someone else, because the committee and the faculty, we want to hear your voice. So I think that's the really only guideline as what not to submit. But pretty much across the board, We really want to see how you write, how you think. So that's sort of what we're looking for. There's a 15-page maximum in those 3 writing samples. You can also submit multimedia clips. So if you have audio clips, you can submit that. You can also submit video, especially if you're interested in the documentary program. We do recommend that if you have something that which you've done, we would like to take a look at that specifically. And then the length of that is between 2 to 3 minutes. Now let's talk about the writing test. The writing test is after you submit your application. So we will notify you roughly about mid-December, and you have about 4 weeks to take the test. It's a 90-minute exam. You don't have to go anywhere to take it. It's all done remotely. It's done through a third-party proctoring testing service. So the only requirement is that you have a stable internet connection and a web camera. The test itself, the format, it's short answer, open-ended questions. It's no right or wrong answers. It's just a way for us to get a sense of your writing style in a time situation. It's based on current events, what's happening in the world. We assume that you're keeping up with what's happening, you're reading the newspaper, you're following the news. It's not a trick question. It's not a trick question. It's not a gotcha test. You don't have to memorize anything. We're not asking you like state capitals or anything like that. It's more of, we just want to get a sense of how you think. And if you're thinking as a journalist, and if, if you're given a situation where there's something with breaking news, you automatically know how to think and what to do and where to go and who to interview. So those are the types of things that we're looking to see if you think like that in sort of like a time situation. There is a test that's floating around on the internet from 15 or 20 years ago. So please ignore that. That has a lot of information about maps and where to, none of that is on the test. It's very straightforward. As long as you're keeping up with current events and what's happening, that's what we're looking to see. And speaking of tests, the GRE, if you're applying for the master's programs, either the Master of Science, Master of Arts, or the data degree program, the GRE is not required. The GRE is only required for the PhD, but this year we're making it optional. So in case you can't get to the testing center, it's not required. Toefl and Ielts. If you are a non-native English speaker and you went to a university where English was not the language of instruction for all 4 years, you are required to take the TOEFL or the IELTS. We do, however, offer where you do not have to take it, but that's only if all 3 or 4 years, depending where you went to school, if you went to school abroad, and it was just a 3-year bachelor's degree versus the US 4-year bachelor's degree, if every class was taught in English from your freshman to your senior year, you do not have to take the test. Otherwise, we will require you to take the TOEFL and IELTS exam. You're able to take the TOEFL take home, the home edition. So if you're not able to get to the testing center, we will accept that the TOEFL home edition exam. I think for the application requirements, that's it. Make sure you're paying attention to the deadlines. Each program has its own deadline, but I'll give you a breakdown. The Master of Science, the full-time, part-time data, And the PhD is December 15th. The MA program, that deadline is January 6th. If you're applying for the dual computer science and journalism degree, it's January 15th. And that's actually through the engineering school. That's the only application that's not through the journalism school portal. So that's January 15th for that. And also we're going to talk about the scholarship aid coming up, but keep an eye, that's a different application and that's due January 15th.
Great. Thank you, David. And I see in the chat there's been a lot of great kind of back and forth, but I think for the next section about financial aid and scholarship, we prefer that if people want to leave things in the chat, we won't be answering them one by one, but we'll address those in the Q&A section at the end of this. So we'll hold on to those questions, but we'll talk about them more after we go over the financial aid that's coming up. And so after David did a great job of telling us about all the application information for the application for admission, we're going to move on and talk about what the cost of attendance is for coming to Columbia and also ways to finance that through scholarship and other opportunities. And I'll turn this over to my colleagues, Edwin Isaac and Taryn Elminzar. So if you want to go ahead, go for that.
Thank you, Ross. And yes, I hope we get to answer all of your questions here. As my colleague said, we have several different programs that we offer, the different lengths of time, different costs. So I'm just going to go over that with you for the next coming year. So for the Master of Science full-time program, and now all these costs are estimated now because the university has not yet decided what those actual costs will be, but we've been doing this for a while now. We kind of know what the kind of percentage increases will be. So these are estimates, but they're pretty accurate. So for the Master of Science full-time program, we're expecting about $85,000 in tuition and fees alone. So right now I'm just talking about tuition and fees. About $85,000 for the Master of Science full-time program, about $120,000 for the data degree program. The part-time program is 5 semesters. Now the first academic year will be about $40,000 in tuition and fees. The second academic year will be about $55,000. So it'll be in total probably about $10,000 more in tuition fees than the full-time program. Okay, the Master of Arts program will be about $75,000, as well as the PhD. But Taryn will talk. Assistant Dean Almanzar will talk about the PhD program a little bit more about how that will work. If any of you are considering the dual degree program with computer science, you can expect about $85,000 each academic year. That's 2 years in the dual degree program. Okay, so that's tuition and fees. Okay, now you all need to sleep somewhere and eat some food from time to time, so you need to worry about your cost of living expenses as well. And what we like to say, it's important to live like a college student while you are in college. Okay, so things we take into account for your cost of attendance are your rent, the cost to eat, your personal expenses, utilities, transportation. We estimate that it'll cost about $4,000 per month in New York. You could probably do it less than that if you want to, find more reasonable means to live in New York. There's so many options to live around campus. There's on-campus housing as well. I think if you start your planning early, you can definitely find some reasonably priced places to live, especially now, actually. And I think our estimates for food, I think we estimate almost maybe about $700, $750 a month for food. Now, again, we're not giving you a bill for food. We're not giving you a bill for rent unless you obviously live on campus. These are just estimates that we want you to have when you plan out what it will cost you to live in New York, right? So you plan on the higher side and you try to keep it under that, okay? Now let's talk about how we can pay for this, right? There's many different ways you can pay for this. I'm gonna talk about a couple of them, and then Dean Almanzar will speak about our institutional funding, okay, which requires an entirely separate application process. But what all of you should be doing now, if you're considering graduate school at all, is looking at researching outside scholarships. We have a database on our website full of outside scholarships. I suggest you look through them today because the deadlines for those outside scholarships vary throughout the calendar year. There may be a scholarship that you are eligible for that is due next week for people who are going to start next year, possibly. So take the time to go through that database. I would suggest obviously doing your own searches for outside scholarships. I would also suggest going to other schools' websites, maybe other schools within Columbia or other perhaps journalism schools, and see what outside scholarships that they have on their websites and go through them. Make your own little database for yourself of outside scholarships, make a column for the deadlines for all of them, sort them by the deadline date, and have your own spreadsheet there, and just continually be persistent at trying to secure outside scholarships to fund the entire cost of your attendance, or at least as much as possible of your cost of attendance. Secondly, federal loans. The government offers federal loans for graduate students. You are considered to be an independent while you are at school as a graduate student. So all of this is on you. As far as the costs or the charges that Columbia applies to you, those are going to be in your name, that you are responsible for that cost. Whether or not you have your mother, your father, or your uncle pay for that, that's fine, but the responsibility rests with you. So the federal loans that are offered to you are one for $20,500, which is called an unsubsidized loan. And then there's what's called a graduate plus loan, which you can apply to, and it can cover your entire cost of attendance. Okay, some things to think about right now is doing a FAFSA. The FAFSA is available for you to complete right now, the 2021-2022 academic year FAFSA. That is available right now, so you can go ahead and complete that if you'd like. You don't have to do so right now, but it is available for you to do. I would say take a look at your credit history, make sure that's all clean, so you can borrow as much as you'd like without any problems. Make sure you are not in default of any loans. If you are in default, please restore that immediately. That takes a long time to clear. So if you want to borrow loans and you are in default, I suggest you you can even contact me and we can look at it, but you need to contact the school from where you borrowed from, and they need to, or you need to work with the servicer of those loans to get that resolved. So I suggest you take a look at what's called your NSLDS record of your previous student loans and make sure you are up to date with all those loans. When you are in school, please keep in mind you are also eligible for what's called in-school deferment. So while you're in school, you do not have to repay on your loans. It's still accruing interest, okay? But you don't have to repay on those loans while you're in school. And lastly, about federal loans, the interest rates will be fixed, but the interest rates are unknown for the 21-22 academic year. We'll know the interest rates for those loans in probably around early June of next year. We'll know what the interest rates are for the loans that will be offered to you. And then lastly, on my part, private loans. Private loans work in a somewhat similar fashion as what the Graduate Plus loan offers you. You can borrow an amount to cover your entire costs. I would just keep in mind just a little bit of the details of the private loans. As far as the interest rates, is it variable? Is it fixed? Is it a low interest rate at the beginning, but has the opportunity to increase later? You want to make sure you just understand the details of that and understand the repayment options as well. You might not have the same repayment options as you do with a federal loan. Federal loans can tie your repayment to the amount of income that you receive. Also, for international students, you can apply for private loans as well, but you more than likely will need a co-signer who is a United States citizen. Okay, so I hope those answered your questions about loans, outside scholarships, and costs. Dean Almanzar will speak to you about our institutional aid process.
Thank you, Edwin. And just a friendly reminder that we will be taking all questions after we're done with our presentation. So with that said, we do offer institutional funding to all of our students are eligible to apply for them, whether you are a US citizen or permanent resident or an international student. I'm assuming that most of you have looked at our website and you've seen a list of scholarships that we have there. And I just wanted to say that that is not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination. We have over 200 scholarships that we can allot an award to eligible students. In order to qualify for it, you have to fill out the scholarship aid application. As my colleague David Hooker mentioned earlier, it's separate from the admissions application, will be available in December. And as he stated, it will have a January 15th deadline. Please remember that, or no, I should say, that all of the information that we're asking for in the scholarship aid app, it's your information. We do not need your parents' information there. If something doesn't apply to you, just put in 0 or an A as applicable. We're going to be asking for just some financial data. We're going to be asking about your interest in journalism, the kind of experience that you have. And that is, again, for us to review your eligibility for the scholarship funding that we have available. The amount and the percentage, because I saw that as one of the questions of students who receive funding, it's pretty much dependent on the available sources that we have. Every single penny that we give out, it's based on donations that are given to the J School. So in order for a student to be eligible for or to qualify, the first thing first, and I cannot emphasize this enough, if you walk away with anything from my presentation, just walk away with this: hit submit. Please, I cannot tell you how many people start the scholarship aid application and then they don't finish that critical step. If we don't have a scholarship aid app from you, we cannot consider you for funding. So that's all I'll say about that. In terms of the range and the available and the percentage of students, again, it all depends on the funding that we have available. But on average, the range can be anywhere from about $20,000 to about, I would say 110 or so, depending on the program. Every program has its own scholarship pot of funding, own eligibility requirements. On average, anywhere from about 65% to about 85% or so of students who apply for scholarship funding become are eligible or receive some sort of funding for it. Based on the figures that my colleague Edwin gave to you before in terms of the cost of attendance and tuition and fees, you can notice that although our scholarship funding can help mitigate the cost, it doesn't mean that it will cover the full cost of attendance, which includes tuition fees and living expenses. So that's why we strongly urge you to look at and start planning for your finances now. So start now, start applying for all sorts of scholarship outside private scholarships, and look out for the J School Scholarship Aid application, which will be coming out in December. PhDs, I should mention this, for the PhD students or the applicants, you do not need to fill out the scholarship aid application. Again, PhD students, only PhD students, you do not need to provide the application. And I'm seeing here the questions are popping in. Ross, why don't we jump right into it? I'm seeing here that there is asking if the scholarship aid application takes into account need, and the answer is yes. For the scholarship, we will be considering need as provided for with the information that you provide on the aid, but my colleague John is correct when he's saying that we are a need-blind admissions school. What does that mean? It means that when we are evaluating your admissions application, we will not look or take into account your financial circumstances. We don't look at it, we don't review it, we don't see it. For the scholarship aid, we do take need into account, separate process for it.
Thanks, Denise. While we're talking about financial aid, there's a couple questions about work study, if that's something that's available for students at the J School, especially in the master's programs.
So there is work study. So there's two different types of kind of umbrellas of employment at the university. One is federal work study and one what is called casual. So federal work study is for students who are citizens or permanent residents. I don't know if we talked about it much, but we recommend and all our full-time students do not work while they are, you know, enrolled in school here. Our part-time students, if they would like to have federal work study, they may be eligible for it. And as far as the casual, anybody, international or citizen or permanent residents, they can apply for what's called deemed to be casual employment at the university.
Okay, thanks. And I think at this point, we'll be opening up the chat. So if you have questions about any of the aspects, financial aid, the programs, application, you can list those there and we'll try to get to as many as we can. I know as people are doing that, there was a question earlier about applying to the Master of Arts or the Master of Science program. Someone who might have experience maybe on the borderline in terms of what might be required for that. And I think my colleague mentioned, John, in the chat that, so if you apply to the MA program and you feel like you might still maybe not have as much experience as some candidates and you might want to be considered for the MS program, you're welcome to check a box on the application for that, where you can say that you'd like to be considered for the MS program. If you do check that box, that means you'll still have to take the writing test, which is required of all MS applicants, which David described earlier. So that's one thing you'll have to do in addition to the MA application requirements in that case. And if our admissions committee feels like a candidate is a better fit for the MS, then a candidate might be then admitted to that program rather than the MA, but you wouldn't have to apply separately to the MS than the MA. And I should say also, you know, if you're thinking about the two programs and if it's a question of experience, if you have the experience, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do the MA if you have had professional experience. It's really about what you want to do, you know, as a student at Columbia. If you really want to get the skills training in a different area of journalism, like we were saying, audio, video, multimedia storytelling, then the MS still might be a good fit for you if that's something you want to do, but you've already been working in journalism for a while. But if it's that subject area expertise and that ability to really have that depth of knowledge in a certain area, then the MA might be the better fit if you're sitting there kind of thinking about what the best next step would be for you in terms of your own training. Great. Let's see. Check the chat here.
And I'll just jump in, Ross, while you look for some more questions. For our international students, there's also Fulbright Scholarship opportunities. You want to make sure you take a look to see when the deadlines are for applying for Fulbright. And obviously any other outside scholarships that I was talking about earlier.
Okay, looks like in terms of applications, we had a question about applying in terms of writing samples. If you're someone who's been working in a different area of kind of a profession, so you're doing more statistics or something that's not maybe writing based, and you want to put in some pieces into your application, what would you recommend if you've done some co-authored pieces, but you haven't done maybe a self-authored article yourself?
I would suggest, you know, I mean, this is what, October 15th? You know, you could start writing about, you know, something that you're following, like a current event. You know, depending on where you are, you can sort of talk about something that you're interested in reporting on. So, you know, you have the advantage where you still have time before the application deadline in December. So if you don't have any pieces of samples that you've done solo, you could just start writing and put something together for the, you know, specifically for the application.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Christine, maybe you could follow up on this question about the dual degree that's offered between our MS program at the journalism school and the master's in the religion department.
Sure. That is a 2-year program that students apply to separately. So you apply to the journalism school for the journalism school admission and to the religion department at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. You have to be admitted to both programs. And if you're admitted to both programs, you're in the dual degree program. What it really allows people to do is to do a really, really in-depth study of different religions, and then at the journalism school, learn how to apply that subject area knowledge to the reporting and writing that you're doing. Most students at the journalism school will also take, there's a religion reporting course here in the second semester that's offered by Ari Goldman. And it's also worth getting in touch with Professor Goldman directly by email to let him know of your interest in the program.
Mhm.
I also wanted to touch base. I saw one question somewhere along the line here about the displaced persons. Columbia University does offer full scholarships for displaced persons who are here generally in the United States. You would complete our the journalism school scholarship application. That will be due, usually it's mid-January. And as Taryn mentioned, that scholarship application opens on December 1st.
Mhm. Great. And we have a question from someone who's interested in, I guess, doing investigative film or documentary, I imagine, and also wanting to do the doctorate. Is that a practical combination?
I would say that that is not something that you can do in the doctoral program.
Mhm.
You're looking at two very different sets of interests. And so if you're interested in learning how to do documentary films, then the Master of Science program would be the most appropriate to look at. The PhD program offers no instruction in specifically in journalism or in documentary filmmaking.
Great. Thanks, Christine. And then a question about that writing test that David described. If people have potentially like a disability or something that may prevent them from being able to do that easily on that kind of computer format, are there some adjustments that can be made in those cases?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely. John.
Yeah, so definitely email me. I'll put my email in the chat. What we require is just documentation indicating the assistance that you would need. We have our Office of Disability Services review that, and then they let us know the extended amount of time that you would need to complete the test. And then I forward all of that information to ProctorU to ensure that you get the amount of time that you require. So just definitely send that information to me and we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Looks like we have a question now about looking at the general MS that John talked about and broadcast journalism. And I know we don't necessarily have a program called a Master's in Broadcast Journalism. The broadcast opportunities at our school live in the Master of Science program, the general program that John talked about. And so you don't necessarily have to apply specifically to that. And there's not a specific concentration in broadcast, but we have some great opportunities for people who want to pursue that area of journalism in the MS, including a class called Video Newsroom, which is offered in the spring by Professor Nina Alvarez. And that offers you the opportunity to do a full-fledged news broadcast with a whole studio in our building. That it's like a multi-million-dollar studio where you can have anchors desks and a big screen behind you where you can project different things. And you'll have people going out and reporting in the city, doing segments, and then hosting a whole news show and rotating through the different roles. So that's the broadcast kind of opportunity at our school, but we don't have a broadcast specialization, so to speak, at the school, but it's definitely something you can pursue within the MS itself.
There were also some questions about applying to 2 different programs. We do ask that you apply to one program, really choose the program that speaks the most to you and submit an application for that. We read every application in a very holistic way. And so we really try to make sure that people are placed in what we feel is the best fit. If we feel like maybe, you submitted an Master of Science, Stabile, investigative concentration application, and we think you're much better for the comprehensive track, we will admit you to that. We basically make the assessment if we think that you'd be a better fit for a certain program. Some people, apply for a program and we feel like they might have, an abundance of experience and they might actually be, qualified for the MA. We usually reach out to those students and ask if they'd like to be considered for that. So choose the program that speaks most to you, and then from there we'll be able to assess applications and make decisions and kind of consult with you if we feel like another spot might be better.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Christine, I think we had some questions about, I think there's a scholarship that the university itself provides for displaced people. And then there's another question about scholarship opportunities for people who are in conflict zones and what is or isn't available from the school.
Sure. For the university scholarships for displaced persons, they run through the individual divisions at the university or the individual schools. And so if you are a displaced person, you would still submit the journalism school scholarship application, which will be available on the website as of December 1st. And that application deadline will be in the middle of January. It's usually the 15th of January. And then as far as scholarships for people coming from conflict zones, we have many scholarships that are unrestricted. And so we have discretion in how we award those scholarships. We have other scholarships where there are specific restrictions that the donors have requested. So for instance, somebody who is doing political journalism or broadcast journalism, or somebody who is doing data journalism and comes from India, or somebody who is from Oregon, or somebody who wants to do print journalism. There are all kinds of possibilities. There are more than 200, which is why we do not list all of them on the website. What we encourage you to do is to complete and submit our scholarship application. And when you go into the scholarship application, you'll see that we have a lot of check boxes so that you can indicate what your specific interests are, as well as your experiences. And that helps to guide us when we start figuring out which scholarships, who might be eligible for which scholarships. There are also scholarships for things like people who are interested in international business, or specifically for international students. As Taryn said a little bit earlier, our best advice is simply that you apply, fill out the scholarship application, hit the submit button. And that, as Taryn mentioned, is because we cannot consider you for scholarship assistance if you do not apply for it. And I have to tell you that one of the things that breaks my heart every single year is the email that I get in April. And it always happens, and it's always more than one. Is it too late? Is it too late? I was too busy. I didn't have time to submit it. Oh, I forgot. My answer at that point is the money has been spent. So please, please, please pay attention to those deadlines, get that scholarship application in, make sure that you hit the submit button. We want to be able to consider everybody for scholarship assistance.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And I just piggyback on what Christine have stated. I saw a question there, is there one application for all of the scholarship that we offer? And the answer is yes. There is one application for all of the scholarship that the J School offers. For any other private funding, which I saw that my colleague David and I believe John, thank you, gave the listing of the outside scholarships of what we have offered, of what we know about. Please note that each one of them have their own application process and deadline. So you have to adhere to whatever it is that the organization is looking for. So just keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, because I'm seeing some questions regarding about that, if you are applying to a dual degree program, you have to submit 2 separate admissions applications. It's 2 different admissions process. For example, if you're thinking of applying to us and to the School of International and Public Affairs, you must submit the documents and the application by the deadlines for each school. We're not going to be calling the School of International and Public Affairs and saying, are you taking Taryn Almanzar? And they're not going to be calling us either. Two separate admissions process, two separate applications and documents. If you are admitted into both programs at the same time, that's when you become a dual degree student. And at that point, you will talk to either us or the other school and decide which one you will be starting first. So as you're exploring all of the dual degree programs, just keep that in mind.
Great. Thanks, Taryn. And I think we have a question about, I know the scholarship application itself won't be available till early December, but for people who are thinking ahead, are there certain things we require in terms of information, whether it's from a domestic or international applicant in terms of bank information, their own financial background? What kind of things should they have prepared to upload to that kind of application?
Yes, so if you're an international student, we will be asking for income information. Let that be taxes that you filed. If you are dependent on your parent, we would ask for a letter from them just saying that they were supporting you. We may ask also for any banking information. So anything that verifies your income, that's what we will be asking for. If you are a US citizen or permanent resident, we will require for you to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And we will also ask for the 1040, oh wait, IRS, not the 1040. Oh my God, I'm blanking out. I'm gonna look for the name and I'll let you know in a second. But basically, John, do you remember?
It's the document that gives us the permission to ask for the
Exactly.
1040 if we need it. And I'll Google it right now as you're talking.
Okay, I can't believe I'm blanking out right now, but basically it just gives us permission to get the, as John mentioned, the taxes directly from the IRS.
The form 4506.
Thank you, John. Yes, the form 4506. And you would upload that to the application.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's see. I think right now, if you have other questions, please put them in the chat. And maybe in the meantime, I know I talked a little bit about the broadcast opportunities, but since we talked a little bit about the MS, maybe John and I can talk a little bit more about other things you can explore in the MS. You know, the MS is a very kind of flexible degree in the sense that it's a short-term program. It's 9.5 months full-time, but you can explore a lot of different aspects of journalism while you're here in that program. And in addition to broadcast, I know a lot of students have a lot of interest in that. But if you're interested in doing video storytelling, that's something you could do in the MS. If you want to do sports journalism, covering religion, which is something Christine talked about already, covering education, covering race, covering politics, international politics, as well as US politics, investigative classes on healthcare and mental health, all sorts of different options that you can explore within the MS program. Let's see.
All right. I'm going to also put in the chat a link to some 15-week seminar and production courses that we've had in the past. These are always subject to change, but these tend to be ones that are relatively common throughout the years. So this is just kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of what we have to offer. And some of those classes in the 15-week seminar and production course, that's essentially kind of in the MS program where you can kind of like narrow in on something that you really want to leave school with, you know, a kind of area of expertise in, something you really want to develop clips in and things like that. So it's just an example of the variety of different classes you can choose from. Some of them are just, you know, really exciting. We also have things like, you know, food reporting, covering conflict zones, covering issues in mental health care. I mean, it really runs the gamut. So definitely take a look at that link. It gives you, you know, a plethora of information that we have to offer.
Okay, here's a question. I think Taryn, you addressed this a bit about the PhD program, how it differs in terms of not having to apply for a scholarship from the school if you're applying to the PhD program, but what kind of aid is available for accepted PhD students?
you, Ross. Yes, so for the PhD students, it's a pretty standard aid package that we offer. It's listed on our site under the PhD link. But basically, the first 4 years, you will be receiving a living stipend. For the first 3 years, we will cover your classes because you will be taking classes, as Christine mentioned, throughout the university. And then you will have up to 4 years of what we call maintenance and facilities. And basically that's when you're working on your dissertation. You still be charged by the university a particular fee so that you can have access to the libraries, your professors, mentoring, so on and so forth. And we will cover that. So in total, it's about 7 years of aid, with the first 4 receiving a living stipend.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Let's see. People can keep their questions going. We are waiting on some more. Let's see, is there anything else we should discuss? I think, let's see.
Should we just touch base quickly on, because I know we get this usually during the Friday info session, and John, jump in because I know that you've been leading that, and that is the admissions process itself. Mm-hmm. About the fact that we don't have a specific GPA or a specific undergraduate major that we're looking for, that we have a holistic approach when reviewing your app.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people ask about, you know, score requirements and things like that. And I would say by and large, we don't have anything like that. We have students who have, you know, had different kinds of grades in undergraduate school. Grades are not always the most reflective item of our, you know, doesn't really reveal to us as much about someone's journalistic passion or quality as something like their clips. And there's also a spot on the application where if you feel really nervous about some of your grades, you can explain, you can put some of those into context if you'd like. If you want to let us know that you were really focused on your school newspaper, or you were going through something really personal at the time, that's totally fine. We look at every single piece of your application. And so we're really, really interested in everything that you have to offer. And so don't think that because one piece might be, you know, weaker than another, that will disqualify you. We're really looking at, you know, passion, some of the past work that you've done if you're in the MA program, but really that you're committed to the field of journalism, and that you can articulate the case that you are, you know, really meant to be in this field. So that's really, I think, what we're looking at the most. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. We don't accept the GRE for any of our master's programs, so it's not even an option to submit it. And if you are worried about grades, I would not. It's really, you know, you can make up for that in an essay where you make the case for yourself that you're a journalist. So that's not something to really worry about.
Thanks. And I saw a question about the writing test, about whether whoever takes that test gets a result, you know, like something that they're sent back, like a score. We don't have that. So it's not really a test in the way of like a standardized test you may have taken to get into college or other places. It's not evaluated in a like quantitative score metric. It's something that we upload into your application, and it's part of something we review as holistically part of your whole application. But it's not a test that has a score or any kind of thing like that. So again, it wouldn't be something you have to become very concerned about as like as an SAT or whatever test you might be taking in your past. And then a question is following up on that about when results are known about if people are admitted. That will be usually in mid-March. So as David had said, our applications for the MS programs are due December 15th, for the MA January 6th, and for the dual degree January 15th. And then around March 15th, around there is when we announce our admissions decisions. And we usually ask people to make a decision if they're going to attend, if they're admitted, by May 1st. So you have about a month and a half to kind of think things over, look at financing, look at other things in your life, and make that decision at that point.
And just to follow up on the writing test, and David, if I'm repeating you, I'm so sorry. I was also in the chat, so my, you know, everything is a fog. But you know, the thing about the writing test is that it gives us a chance to see what your writing is like under a deadline, because so much of what journalism is deadline oriented. This is a 90-minute exam where we get to see what happens when you sit down and just write. It's unedited. You won't have somebody looking at this, so it really is your voice. It really is how you write. We know that you will be, and you should be having people look at your essays, your writing samples. You should have people that you trust looking at this material and vetting it, because this is, you know, this is a graduate school application. You should have, you know, people who you trust looking at it and giving you their feedback. But this is an opportunity for us to see what your unfiltered writing is like under a deadline. So I would say, you know, for me personally, as somebody who reviews applications, that's really what the point of the writing test is. It's not an assessment of, you know, facts or anything like that. It's much more what it is you bring to your writing. How do you formulate your thoughts? How do you sit down and craft your thoughts to a series of essays under a deadline?
Thanks, John. Let's see. And then a question about, you know, should people think about the odds of applying to one program or another in terms of getting in or getting scholarship? How would you think about applying if you're trying to, you know, try to raise the odds of anything? Is that something you should be thinking about when you're applying, or just thinking about what the best program is for you?
I would say you need to think about, like John has been stating through the chat and also verbally, and Christine as well. Really choose the program that is best for you. What I usually recommend prospective students and applicants is to take stock of where you are right now, where you are in your career. What kind of skill sets do you have? What kind of knowledge do you have? And then think where you want to go, where do you like to be, and identify the gaps. Say, you know what, I would really, for example, love to have, to know and recognize what is the story, to really delve deeper into my sources. So if you're looking for that, if you're looking for the skill sets, then that's the MS program. If on the flip side, you're saying I have 5-6 years of journalism experience, I really want to just deepen my knowledge about science. I want to report about science, but I really don't have that knowledge. Then you know that the MA program is the best one for you to apply. So approach this from that angle. Time will fly when you're here. The programs are very short. Just to reiterate, the MS program, it's about 9.5. If it's data, 12 months. If it's the MA, it's 9. If it's the dual degree with engineering, is 2. So it flies by. It's very demanding. You're investing not only in terms of money, but of your wherewithal, of your time, and you really want to go into the program that is going to prepare you and propel you forward in the career path that you want to go into. Finances, definitely think about it. I'm looking at my colleague Edwin, and I know that he will say, start now, plan for it. It's as though you're, you know, doing a major purchase. The purchase that you're doing is in your future. Definitely consider that. Definitely plan for it. But when applying and choosing the program, make sure that you are picking the right one that is for you and where it's going to give you and fill up the gaps that you currently have. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to expand on that, but yeah.
I think you nailed it, Taryn.
Okay.
And I think since the chat seems to have kind of wound down, we actually have a couple more questions as we said that. Here's a good question about whether we look at age as a factor in admissions, and does it matter? Is our school favored towards any age group, or is it a mix of ages, Christine?
We normally have students here in our degree programs who are anywhere from 20 years old to 65. So age is not an issue. What we're looking for is people who want to be good journalists.
Great. All right. So unless there's any more questions, I think we can probably wrap up this session today, but it's not the end of our conversations with all of you who are thinking about Columbia Journalism School. We're going to be having a wide range of events coming up about specific programs. I can put the link back in here in a second of our upcoming events.
While you're doing that, Ross, I'm just going to jump in response to Peyush's question about specific fields that they should perhaps be focusing on as applicants. Focus on journalism. Read good journalism, listen to good journalism, watch good journalism. If you are thinking about becoming an investigative journalist, pay attention to good investigative journalists and the work that they are doing. If you are interested in becoming a documentary filmmaker, watch journalistic documentary films, because Columbia actually has 2 film programs. We've got a journalistic documentary film program here at the journalism school, but we also have sort of the creative fiction, nonfiction documentary type of film program as well at the School of the Arts. And I think as Taryn was saying, that's why it is so important to identify what the skills are that you already have, what you want to do professionally. Be absolutely brutal with yourself, and determine which skills that you need and which program actually offers it. Because the very worst thing is to be in a graduate program paying a lot of money and be in the wrong program. And we try to avoid that for you at all costs. So help us.
Thanks, Christine. That's a great point. So in the chat right now, you see that link that John and I both put in there that has all of our upcoming events, as well as if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's videos of things you may have missed already that were part of our season. So for instance, a general MA conversation we had a week ago, a writing in the MS program conversation we had that was great, our October session, which had a mix of faculty and alumni in it. And as you look ahead, we'll be having some sessions on documentary, on the MA politics concentration, the MA business concentration, the dual degree program with computer science and journalism. So a lot of different things to look forward to, as well as our November kind of comprehensive information session, which will be on Saturday, November 7th. We'll hear from another range of faculty and alumni and get another overview of some of our programs and get to hear from some different perspectives from the school. So I encourage you all to participate in as many as you can through the rest of this application season, and to check in with us again at apply.journalism@columbia.edu if you have specific questions about your situation, about your application. We're happy to talk about that. So thank you very much for coming, and have a great day or night and a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Hi, everyone.
Ronaldo, please email me with your questions, with your last minute question.
Take care, everyone. Bye.